Today on The State of Us, U.S. teens report that they are constantly using social media. What does that mean? Welcome to The State of Us. I'm your host, Justin T. Weller, joined, of course, today by the one and only, your friendly redneck liberal and the senior resident historian here at True Chat, Mr. Lance Jackson. Today, we're looking at how almost half of U.S. teens report that they are online almost constantly, which is a jump from the 24% who reported the same behavior to Pew Research in 2015. What's changed? Which platforms are responsible for that usage? Also, we have to look at why Meta Platforms, who's the owner of Instagram, was fined $402 million in a long-running investigation that looked at minors who operated business accounts on the service. Instagram has been fined big time on privacy as it relates to teens. So what's happening and what can we do about it from a government standpoint? You notice part of what we have talked about in the past is a lot of what can you do to change your social media? What can parents do to change those habits? And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that today, but a big thing that we want to focus on is what is the government's role in saying, how do we want to allow businesses to profit off of our children? What parameters do we want as a society? Before we dive in though, Lance, do we have a word of the day?
We do. It is a short one. It's 2 syllables, giving Justin a chance today. The word is pavid, P-A-V-I-D. It is an adjective that means to be afraid or fearful, such as, I'm somewhat pavid about our teens' use of technology these days, the amount of their use. How about that?
So let's look at what platforms are they spending time on? And we'll talk a little bit about the significance of that as well. And what platforms are they spending less time on as well? Because I think that is also telling. First up, YouTube is the most popular platform among U.S. teens, with 95% of the coveted demographic saying that they use the site or its mobile app, the survey found. And this is, again, a survey from Pew Research. TikTok, which was launched in the U.S. in 2018 and didn't exist the last time that Pew Research performed a similar survey, is now used by about 67% of those between 13 and 17 years old. Did you catch that first one though, Lance? If you're a teenager in the United States, 95% of them use YouTube. Amazing.
It is. And I remember I was hauling some musical sets a couple of years ago, and I had 4 teenagers in my truck. They were helping, and I was just trying to have a conversation, and none of them watched regular TV. Every show that they watched, or every event, or every comedian or performance that they watched came from YouTube. I mean, I was one of 5 people in the car, and the 4 teenagers, and we had nothing in common to talk about. I mean, I learned because they told me all these different shows and different things that they're watching on YouTube. And so, yeah, I guess they save on a cable bill, or they're not, I mean, they are streaming, right?
Right.
YouTube is streaming. So they are doing that. But that was, having that age old discussion around the water cooler as to what was seen on television the night before. We couldn't have that conversation while we were traveling for the hour from place to place hauling the stuff. So, surprises me that it's 96%, but at the same time,
95.
I think it was, if you round up, it was 96. But it is amazing. But if they're not watching content on YouTube, they're creating content for YouTube. I mean, how many young people do we talk to that's how they're going to make their living?
That's how they think they're going to.
They're going to be a YouTuber, baby, because the person they watch has 7 million views and they're making all this money, and so that's not that hard to do. Okay, it is good to have dreams, and possibly 1 or 2 of them might actually be successful in that venture, and more power to them. but I think it all lends credence to that number of 95, as you say, or 96%, as I say.
The other thing that I think is notable here, right, is that both of the leading platforms, YouTube and TikTok, are based around what type of content? Video, right? It's almost exclusively.
Well, in short video, right? I mean, we talk about attention spans, and we talk about and
I mean, YouTube has all lengths of videos,
sure,
but of course they have introduced in a opportunity to copy TikTok. They've introduced what they call shorts, right? Which is basically the exact same thing as TikTok,
right? Which
are vertical oriented, very short, snippet videos.
Well, in the top 4 in the survey, all have more than 60% of the teenage audience. So, I mean, it's like, right, it is descending order, but it's still a majority, right? A majority of U.S. teens are on these top 4 services. And not only are, the 4 that they are, but the thing that makes me so pavid about our future for our young people is this is a large number of teens, right? I mean, the number of teens with phones, with devices, and now this is how they're choosing to spend their time, right? I mean, what is this going to do? And then, as we're going to talk about later in the show, what do we do as parents, right? What do we do as guardians of these young people? I mean, we want them to have freedom, right? We want freedom of the press, and we want freedom to do these things and to experience these things. But how much of this then is good, and how much of it, when you get to a certain point, starts to have a negative effect? We're still finding that out. And then what legal recourse or ramifications do we have? Or should we have any? Is this the right of an individual to partake, right? As my age-old saying is, I'm sitting here thinking right now, when we're done with the show, I'm going to go get a cheeseburger and a Coke, right? And there's no law against how many cheeseburgers I can eat in a day. So should there be a law as to how many TikTok videos or YouTube videos I can consume? You like that? Consume in one day? I don't know. I mean, that's part of our discussion today.
So just some things for perspective, right, about how things have changed. In 2014, 2015, okay, the last time that Pew Research did this poll, they found that 24% of respondents said they almost constantly used social media, while 56% said they check it several times a day, 12% said about once a day, right? And then several times a week or less was like 5%. 2022, instead of 24%, you're at 46% who say almost constantly.
Almost half.
Almost half. 48% are several times a day. So in other words, the number of teenagers, 13, right, to 17 years old, who say that they either are on social media constantly or several times a day, 94% of U.S. teens. So when we talk about the prevalence, and that's, I guess, the point that I'm getting at here, right? The prevalence of this in their not just, weekly lives or every few days, but their hourly lives, right? Minute to minute, hour to hour. This is in their life, They may actually see, this is crazy to think about, right? They may actually spend more time on social media than they do actually seeing their parents. Because, you might be sleeping at home, right? But, you only have so much time after school and your parents get home at whatever time, and their screen time on social media may actually exceed the amount of time that they see and or spend with their parents, which is pretty remarkable. And I guess the point there that it's trying to be made is, if we collectively are going to be pavid about something, this is it. Understanding how integrated it is into their lives is such an important component of then talking about this next piece, which is from a societal standpoint, are we comfortable with that? You know,
These numbers have obviously gone up because
right, about how things have changed. In 2014, 2015, okay, the last time that Pew Research did this poll, they found that 24% of respondents said they almost constantly used social media, while 56% said they check it several times a day. 12% said about once a day, right? And then several times a week or less was like 5%. 2022, instead of 24%, you're at 46% who say almost constantly.
almost half.
Almost half. 48% are several times a day. So in other words, the number of teenagers, 13, right, to 17 years old, who say that they either are on social media constantly or several times a day, 94% of U.S. teens. So when we talk about the prevalence, and that's, I guess, the point that I'm getting at here, right? The prevalence of this in their not just, weekly lives or every few days, but their hourly lives, right? Minute to minute, hour to hour. This is in their life, They may actually see, this is crazy to think about, right? They may actually spend more time on social media than they do actually seeing their parents. Because, you might be sleeping at home, right? But, you only have so much time after school and your parents get home at whatever time, and their screen time on social media may actually exceed the amount of time that they see and or spend with their parents, which is pretty remarkable. And I guess the point there that it's trying to be made is, if we collectively are going to be pavid about something, this is it. Understanding how integrated it is into their lives is such an important component of then talking about this next piece, which is, from a societal standpoint, are we comfortable with that?
These numbers have obviously gone up because children were home, they were away from school, and so they spent more time. We all spent more time on technology because we were trying to fill that void of human interaction that many of us had by going through social media to try to keep making those connections. But my concern is, will we see by 2025, 2026, is there going to be a drop-off? Is it going to go back to a more normal, more non-destructible use of social media with their time? Or is this a trend that's going to just start involving more and more young people, and we're going to see usage go even higher? That's my major concern. So we've both got a couple little things here, and like you, what do we do about it, right? It's not personal. It's not, we've talked about that, and we've talked about parental guidelines, but what is society or government's role in trying to control this? Or should there be any at all?
The other notable statistic is we've talked about the rise of TikTok, the rise of YouTube, right? The top four, by the way, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat. Okay. So all of those are they're either newly measured as part of Pew Research's survey, or in the case of Snapchat and Instagram, they were measured previously and have increased usage amongst teens. However, in fifth place is Facebook. And big drop, Lance. 71% of teens said in the 2015 survey that they had used Facebook. Only 32% say they're on the platform today.
Almost cut in half.
Right. Another notable, while the other ones have increased, they've also migrated away from, well, and I shouldn't say migrated away because they may have never been on Facebook in the first place, right?
True.
The teens that were surveyed then and now are not necessarily
the same teens.
The same teens.
It was 7 years ago, and they're only using a 4-year period between 13 and 17. So.
Yeah. I was wrong about that. It's 13 to 18, and they break it down. 13 to 14-year-olds who say that they use the internet almost constantly is at 36%.
1/3.
Ages 15 to 18 is at 52%. Almost constantly. And remember, that doesn't count because then if we throw in several times a day, which is very loosely defined, you get 94% of all teens between 13 and 18 fall into that category.
Well, we see it. They're having conversations with one another and doing homework, and they're also on social media while that's going on. So it is, it makes sense that it would be constant.
What else can be revealed from the survey? And why was Instagram fined $402 million? Find out. Keep it here on The State of Us. We'll be right back. The article mentions that one of the reasons for this potential increase is the pandemic, right? I mean, you didn't have as much opportunity to connect outside of digital media with peers. So how do you do it? Well, you do it online. The thing, though, that's interesting, Lance, is upon a quick, little Google search, our friends at the Wall Street Journal in 2018 reported that more than 2/3 of teens say they would rather communicate with their friends online than in person, according to a study at the time that comes as tech companies are trying to help parents and children monitor the time spent online. The percentage of young people who said their favorite way to talk to friends is face-to-face declined to 32% from 49% 6 years earlier, according to the survey of more than 1,000 13 to 17-year-olds, which was conducted from March and April of 2018. So kind of interesting, before the pandemic, right? We're seeing that they say, and I think that's an important thing, right? They say that they prefer that.
Is it, we don't know because this wasn't surveyed, but is it the social angst? Is it people judging you? I mean, because you're the one telling me how all these people are judging everybody and, on these social media sites and, they're disregarding them, throwing them away, not doing it. I just don't get it, but I watch it all the time. Like I said in the last segment, so many young people are sitting there with a group of friends, with a group of people they call their friends, and then they're on social media with other people and not necessarily interacting just with the people in the room, around the table, in the floor, whatever, and sometimes they're including people that aren't there with what's going on. And I get that. And that makes sense. I know that when we're doing something as a family and I want to call a family member that's not there, I'll call them or whatever, or text and say, hey, we're doing this. And, we've even had some Zoom things and, we did a fantasy football draft this weekend with family from Ohio to California, and we all got in at the same time and, we're drafting our teams and talking to each other on our phones. So I understand the allure and the draw of that. But once it's over, it's like, okay, it's time to go back to real life and face to face. But I guess I say go back to real life. Is that real life now? Because with the numbers you quoted so far today, I'm the oddball. I'm the one who, I'm the minority that meets people face to face and looks them in the eye and talks to them. The majority of people, young people, are just talking on their devices to each other and don't look eye to eye and don't have these heart-to-heart conversations in person. They're doing it on a device.
I think part of the challenge becomes too the snowball effect, which is part of what we should feel pavid about, is this idea that the sooner that you become familiar with social media, right, and the less that you interact with your peers face to face, the harder it is to interact with them because the social skills aren't developing the way that they may have for previous generations. The same social skills. I mean, because keep in mind, right, they're developing digital social skills that maybe that other generations don't have or don't have to the same extent. So it's not to say they're not developing any social skills, but traditional social skills that we think of. And then what happens is, right, you're a teenager anyway, so there's the typical things of self-consciousness and concerned, right, about the future and just trying to figure things out. So you're going through all of that. And then you add this component of it makes them nervous and uncomfortable to have to speak with people in person because they're not adept at it.
Do most people on TikTok just watch? Or are most people performing? Because when you say they're hiding behind and they're not developing skills, it's like, are they performing more because of TikTok? Are they performing more because of YouTube, those being the top two? Is this an outlet or a release? Or are the majority of the users of these streaming services just viewers of what's going on? And I don't know if you can answer that or not, but that's me being a novice in this area. Do I know what they are? Yes. I used to watch some YouTube videos in my classroom, oh, wait a minute. I haven't been teaching for 8 years, but I would go to YouTube and find snippets of historical footage or whatever and show it in my classroom. So I'm familiar with it. TikTok, I've heard from my daughter, Dad, you got to quit bashing TikTok because you're losing the younger audience. But I just have done all the reading about what it does to the attention span and to young minds. And that's why I bash TikTok as an entity that gets people to perform, or as an entity that entertains people. I'm not bashing TikTok. I'm just bashing that it seems like it affects negatively the minds of the people who spend so much time on it. It's like anything else, right? A lot of things are good in moderation, and many of those things are bad if you do them in excess. And that's my concern with TikTok.
Yep. And I think that's a big part of what's being talked about, is that chronic social media usage can be very harmful. And that goes back to a thing that we've talked about before. The platform in and of itself, right, or the notion of social media in and of itself is not necessarily evil or terribly harmful, but it's what we humans do, which is we're not always good at moderation. And the companies are designed to make money, and the way they make money is by keeping you on longer. So the algorithms, right, and the people working there are always focused on, not always, but many of them, right, are focused on how do we make the experience better and better and better for the user. Another way to frame that is, how do we make it more addictive, right? Which is why social media does employ many things that it's not just young people, right? It's that hook anybody, because they are, proven time and again to be effective strategies at drawing and hooking and bringing somebody in. At the end of the day, they're mediums, right? That's what they are. And what they do is figure out what you like and the things that you can't say no to. So they basically curate your own personal addiction, right? Which is part of why they're so powerful. Because if Lance spent very much time on TikTok, and, answers about this vary, but from a few minutes to 30 minutes, TikTok would have probably figured out pretty quickly, here's the type of stuff that I need to show him. I'm going to show him highlights of the greatest baseball stuff. I'm going to show him boomers ragging on the young generation. I'm going to show him, and I'm just going to hammer him with the stuff that he loves. The problem is that, and we talked about this on another episode, the sense of time, partly because these things are not long, and because, and this is, I know it seems like such a small thing, people, but boy, I can tell you it makes a difference. I took the step a few months ago of disabling autoplay on Netflix. So if you're familiar with that, right, Netflix episode ends, the credits start rolling, and in the bottom right, you've got this little preview of the next video, and in 5, 4, 3, 2, bam, next episode, right? And in order to not watch the next episode, I have to choose to back out. And there's a super powerful, and again, I know it seems so small, but it really is a major thing, super powerful psychological effect to not having to do anything to keep going. In other words, I have to consciously decide I don't want to do this, rather than I have to consciously decide to continue doing this. Right. So when you disable autoplay on Netflix or any of your other favorite streaming platforms, YouTube, you can disable it on there, which, by the way, I've also done. It is amazing what a simple difference I think that makes.
2 points to that before we move on. And that is, one, you're talking again about something you've done. And should there be something done for people? That's a step you can take. But we're talking about, and secondly, you do that because you know there are other things to do in life because you've done other things. If I do the same thing, right? There are a couple games that I like to play. And I realized just a couple weeks ago, I'm not reading as much as I want to because it's easier to pick up the device and play the game. And so it's like, yeah, I'm going to quit because I want to read. But what if I'm a young person and I don't have any other activity to dwell on or to fall back on? Like, oh, I'm not getting to do this and this that I like. And that's a concern with young people, is they're getting hooked on these things that they don't even realize. It's not their fault, but they don't even realize there are other things you can do with your time. There are other things besides these social media sites that can be entertaining, that can be enjoyable, that can be fun, all of those things. So those are the 2 points, right? Is that they're catching young people at such an early age and developing them that's my fear, is that they never learn anything else that can be enjoyable. And secondly, the way you stop it is something that you personally do, but is it time for us to ask the government to step in to help solve some of this?
Let's talk about it. Keep it here on The State of Us. We'll be right back. Meta Platforms, the parent company of Instagram, formerly known as Facebook, was fined $402 million in a long-running investigation that looked at minors who operated business accounts on the service. This was in the European Union, for potentially exposing more of their contact information than if they operated a personal account. Users under 18 now, but not then, have their accounts set automatically to private when they sign up. So this is an important thing to understand, right? For example, on Instagram, private or public. If it's public, it's exactly what it sounds like. Everybody can see your account, regardless of who they are, where they are, their age. Anybody can get to it, right? If it's private, the only people that can see what you post are the people that you've added as a friend, right? I'm oversimplifying that, but that's, that's one first and foremost. Okay. So now by default, when somebody under the age of 18 signs up, they're set to a private account. They can turn it into a public account, but they start out as a private account. And the way you usually had to do it is you start as a public account. And if you want a private account, then you say, I want it that way.
They only did this because they were getting hassled about it.
Correct.
They didn't do this. I mean, they're proclaiming, oh, we did this because out of the kindness of our heart. No, they were facing litigation. They knew they were in trouble. There had been some Wall Street Journal reports that we commented on earlier in our shows. And they said, you know what? We better do something about this before we get in big time trouble. Right. And you say, well, $402 million, the Irish government got them for. Yeah. What'd you tell me, Justin, in the article? That's like 1% of their profit. Yeah, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, 1% of Meta's net income.
Okay.
So just to put the $402 million in perspective,
right?
Meta brought in, it's a drop, right? It's a drop in the bucket. It's not gonna topple.
Yeah. Think of you getting fined, 1% of your income, right?
Right.
Take away 3 or 4.
It's not good.
No, it's not good, but it's not.
You're not going to be homeless, or hopefully not.
Before Justin leads you down the path that these companies are just out of the kindness of their heart helping us with young people. No, they're doing it because they were about to get in trouble. If left to their own devices, they're about making money. And they can say whatever they want, but the bottom line is, in my opinion, they want to make money. They really don't care what they do to you and me.
One thing that I think is important to keep in mind, right, is the social media companies of today are not what they were, and I'm talking now to millennials, right, when we were growing up. They're not. they've changed drastically. They've become some of the most profitable, some of the largest and most powerful companies in the world.
They are the man now.
And they did. Right. And they did not used to be, but it's so important to understand the change. Okay. There was a time where Facebook was something that most people didn't know what it was, and most people didn't have it, and it wasn't inundated with ads. You were on Facebook because you wanted to keep up with some of what your friends were doing somewhere far away, which not bad, right? That's a nice thing. And people would frequently, and Facebook,
and it was free.
Right.
They offered it free, and it's going to be free forever. And we just want to exchange ideas. And isn't this wonderful? And we don't want any government regulations because we're all about just the human experience and all of those things that I remember a former member of this show used to talk to me about till he was blue in the face, and it should never be charged. And there should, it's the free exchange of ideas, and it's free. And now they're worth billions and billions of dollars. Yeah. I don't think it's free anymore, dude. Hopefully you're still listening since you're not with us anymore.
It all worked out
until it's not free anymore.
Until they figured out that they could make a lot of freaking money off of people's time.
And I'm ranting a little bit, but I'm saying that in defense of your point. These were the avant-garde ideas.
And many of them were started with good intentions.
Right.
That's the other thing.
But now they are the man that they railed against when they first started. They are that person that they railed against. They are that company now that they were trying to say were bad.
If you look at initial iterations, right, of Facebook and Instagram, and you compare them from when they launched to today, very, very, very different platforms from what they used to be. And I'm not saying that they were better back then. All I'm saying is that they were different. They were on the outside looking in. And I honestly believe that many of those platforms were originally about connecting people. I think they will still tell you that that's what they're about today. I think what Lance and I have seen over the past number of years has indicated that is not the primary motivation. The primary motivation is to make money. And in doing so, they have led to terrible political division, right? They have stoked that energy and that fear. They have spread misinformation. They are infecting our young people. And this is all, by the way, coming from somebody who does use those platforms. So I think they can still be used. There is a place for them, but it is a question of, and that's what it boils down to now, of how much are we willing to give away of our children to these companies? That's the fundamental question that's being asked.
Well, that is the
foundation of how they make money.
The fact is that's their business model.
Right.
We're not making this stuff up. We're not.
No.
We're not.
That's how they make money.
This isn't a dark story, of what's going on. This is the fact. You read their business plan. You go to their annual meetings that are covered by the press. And it's given to you. This is what we're doing. And this is how we're doing it better. And this is how we're going to improve so that we can now make our shareholders more money. And they're not what they used to be. And the problem is, those of you who grew up with them, you still see them as this innocuous little group out there that's trying to stick it to the man. And that's not them anymore. And now you're having children of your own. You're thinking, well, that was cool when I was, a teenager, and it's all great and it's good. And man, quit banging on these guys. They're offering great. It's what they offer to us is free exchange of ideas. And that's what it was when you were a teenager. That's not what your teenager is experiencing now. I'm all about taking care of young people. They are the future. They are what we are all banking on, making this world a better place. That's what older people said to me when I was a teenager, and that's what I'm saying. I know Justin makes fun of me all the time as the boomer, yelling about the horribleness of young people, but that's not me at all. I am the boomer, but I sing the praises of young people, and I'm fearful, all right? I am very pavid about this, the attitude of social media companies hurting young people and therefore hurting their future. And I'm against anything that hurts the future of young people.
What I think the government should do immediately, some of these are small, not small steps, okay? But I believe in the universal good of it. For those under the age of 18, right, autoplay and auto scroll, okay? Those are, so in other words, automatically playing the next video and automatically moving your feed up for you when you finish a video or other content, illegal. Not turned off by default, right? Not I can go into some setting and change it, not because I challenge any of our listeners.
Don't we make other things for minors illegal that are legal for adults?
Yes.
I mean, that's
because
not out of the realm of what we do now, right?
No. And this doesn't stop you from using it, right? You could still spend 8 hours on it if you want to. The only difference is that I'm now asking you to actually have to say that you want to keep going rather than say you want to quit. And if there's anybody out there who's listening who, wants to contend that that's somehow a bad thing for children, I'm not changing the content they can get access to. I'm not changing the amount of time they can spend on it. All I'm doing is changing the nature of opting in. We're improving impulse control and giving them that pause that we know is so important to deciding whether or not you want to continue. Because what happens is most people don't even decide if they want to continue, because what tech companies have done is they have shortened that span so small that the time that you spend debating is longer than before autoplay kicks in. And then, the next thing's going, so I guess I better watch it. I mean, that's what they've done. And this isn't rocket science, right? If it's going to take you 8 seconds to make a decision and auto plays at 4 seconds, then you're not going to decide to stop. You're probably not going to decide to stop until you've gone way down the rabbit hole and spent hours and hours and hours. So this is to me, it seems like such a no-brainer. We're not changing access to content. All we're doing, right, is saying we're acknowledging that children haven't fully developed impulse control, and that we're going to, as a society, say that is something we believe fundamentally. You should not have unlimited addiction-prone access to social media. Now, you can still get on it. We're not capping screen time. It's just, to me, that seems like, can't we all agree on that and just do that thing? Right. I think there's more that has to be done. But to me, that's a simple, easy, let's do it.
I was sitting there banging my head thinking, what can we do? I think you've hit on it. I mean, I
think that's a huge one. That's a great first step.
Right. And it follows other things we do, right? Because we say, well, you're too young to get a driver's license. You're too young to vote yet. You're too young to, to buy this.
It's not unprecedented.
To buy these tobacco products or whatever.
And we're still letting them use it. Right. I mean, we're not even taking it away.
Right. In those situations, we're saying you can't do it. You're still saying, well, you can still use social media.
And you can use it as much as you want.
You can still watch YouTube as many hours as you want. You just have to decide to keep going.
You must consciously make the decision to continue.
I mean, that's easier than other stuff. I would have come down a lot harder, so I have no problem.
I wrote down some other things, but they require more discussion. But I want people to think about that one. And if you like this, we can talk about it more, because I think there's a lot of other ideas. But I tried to, of everything I wrote down, I wanted to come up with something that I'm like, I think we could do that, by God. Can we as adults be the adults in the room for a minute and say,